Hello guys, welcome back to Modern Web, and in today's video we will going to learn how to make this password validation. As you can see in the demo, whatever I am typing, it is taking or checking that validation. So in this tutorial I will also do CSS. So if you just want to see the JavaScript part, go to this timestamp. Otherwise, without wasting time, let's get right into it. So let's start with the video. Make an index file and let's write the HTML template, and in the title let's give strong password validation. After done with it, let's link our style.css file using link tag, and let's add the app.js file using script tag. So after you have all the files linked in, now let's go to Google Fonts so that we can import the Poppins Google font in order to proceed with our project. Well, if you just want to see the functional part, you can skip this part. So click on this first link and this is the page. Now search for a regular font size, which is this 401. Click on the select regular and now scroll down to click on this icon to copy the links and paste it inside the HTML file. So we have the Google font links now. Now we have to set the default font family to Poppins. For that, in the style.css file, first of all use star selector to select all the elements, and then set margin and padding to 0 and set the box sizing to border box. Now select the body and just come to this page, scroll down and copy this font family property, and this will add the Poppins as a default font family for all the elements. So now let's start making our password input. So inside a body, make a div and give it a class. Let's call it password input box, and this will be the wrapper for our input box as well as the validation pop-up. So inside it, make an input and give it a type password, and in the placeholder you can type anything, whatever you want to show in the input field, and also give it a class, let's say password input, so that we can use this class to select this input inside the style.css file. After that, we need the icon, and for that we will going to use Font Awesome. If you don't know Font Awesome is a library which provides you icon. So search for Font Awesome CDN and go to CDN.js website and copy the first URL. Now below this Google Fonts, let's add that URL to link the Font Awesome library. So you can add a comment saying Font Awesome so that you will know in the future that below it is a Font Awesome link. And using the link tag, just add the CSS library. Now again in the browser, search for Font Awesome this time and open its official web page. Now click on the search icon to search and search for I'm going to use this icon, but if you wish to use any other, feel free to do that. Paste that I tag here, and if I refresh, you can see on the right side the password as well as the I icon. So now let's style it to make it more appealing. So inside a body, first of all set its background color to this hex code and set its minimum height to 100 VS so that we can use display flex to make the password in the center, and use justify content center and align item center to make the password wrapper perfectly in the center. Great. Now select the wrapper, which is the password input box, and we will give position relative to this because the validation pop-up will going to have an absolute position, and then give a fixed width and height to the wrapper. Now select the input itself using the password input class, and here set its width to 100% so it will cover the wrapper's entire width and height, and set its background to white. Well, of course it is white, but if you want to change the background to something else, you can give that color. Remove the border using border none and give it some padding, and set outline none, so whenever you click on the password you won't see a border around it. Now use border radius to give a smooth edges, round edges, and use color property to change the text color of the input. Now I want the placeholder color value to be same as the input color. So select the placeholder using placeholder selector and set its color to this hex code. Now we will add a focus effect to it. So select the password input on focus state using the focus selector, and when it gets focused, just add this box shadow. So first shadow will going to be the same color as the background, and then add another shadow using comma instead of this semicolon and set its color to different color, and I'm setting it to green color. And what it will do, it will create a sort of transparent look. As you can see, there is a gap between the green color and a white color, which is creating that transparent look. Now add a custom class here so that we can select it in the CSS. I'm not going to select it using the font awesome classes. So select it here, and first of all set its position to absolute so we can align it on the right side. So set its right to maybe 15 pixels and set its top to 50% so that we can align it perfectly center in the y-axis like this. Set its cursor to pointer so whenever you take your mouse over the eye, you can see the cursor change to hand, and give it a color, of course, to change the color of the icon. So now if I type something in this password field, a very long password, and if I zoom in, you can see that the password is going behind the icon, and that's not what we want. So inside this password input, add a padding right and give it here, let's say 45 pixels. So what it will do, it will add 45 pixels padding from the right side, so the password won't go behind the eye, as you can see. Now let's create the validation pop-up. So for that, after the eye icon, make a div, and this will be the wrapper for that pop-up. So give it a class password checklist, and inside it make an h3, and that will be the title of that checklist. So give it a class checklist title, and here you can say password should be, or anything you want to display. And since it's a checklist, I'm going to use an UL to create that list. So make a UL and give it a class, of course, checklist, and inside it make li for individual list items. So give it a class list item, and you can type anything, whatever the condition is. In my case, the first condition will be at least 8 characters. So this is simple text, so you can type anything here. So let's quickly change the condition text, and then we will write the CSS. So after doing that, you can see the list item on the right side, and now let's style it so that it will look much better. So in the CSS file, select the password checklist, and first of all set its position to absolute so it won't interfere in your form flow, and then set its top to this calculated value. So use calculated function and say 100% plus 10 pixels, and give it a width of 100%, and add a padding of 20 pixels from top and bottom, 30 pixels from left and right. Give it a background of this hex code, and let's give it some border radius for the round edges, maybe 5 pixels. Great. Now select the password or the checklist title And let's set first of all its font size to maybe 15 pixels to make the text little small, and change the color to this hex code. Now add a margin bottom of 10 pixels to create some space between the heading and the list. Now select the checklist, and basically here just use list style none property to remove the bullet points from the list items. As you can see, they are gone now. Now use list item class to select all the list items and give them a padding left of 30 pixels, so it will create some spacing where you can make the custom icon, and change the color to white along with a font size of 14 pixels. Now let's add the custom icon in front of all the allies. So for that we will going to use the before pseudo element. So select the before state, or actually before pseudo element, and set their content to nothing. Well, we need the icon here, so in the font ensemble search for the icon, which is the cross, and I will use this. So in the top right you can see this Unicode. Just click on it and copy it, and after the slash in the content paste that Unicode, and it will import the font awesome icon and add it as the content. You can see a rectangle in front of the list, so just now set the font family to font awesome, and then the font awesome will generate the icon. As you can see, there is a cross in front of the list items now. Now say their display to inline block so that it will be in the same line as the list item, and just give them margin of 8 pixels from top and bottom, and this is important, give them margin left negative 30 pixels. Make sure this margin left and this padding left is same but of opposite sign. And now we need some space between the sign and the list item, so just add width 20 pixels and it will create that space. Change the font size to 12 pixels and we are done. So now select the list item when it gets the checked class, and this checked class we will toggle it from the JavaScript. So basically when it will have the checked class, we will set its opacity to 0.5. So if I add the checked class, you can see the opacity is down to 0.5. And now when the list item have the checked class, select the before pseudo element, and here change the content to the tick icon. So in the content add a slash, and now search for tick or check, and this is the icon that we will use. So copy the Unicode and paste it here, and just change the color to this hex code. And now in the output you can see the tick or check icon in front of the list item. Great. So basically our CSS and HTML part is done. Now we just have to work with our JavaScript to make this thing fully functional. But before that, if I add this slash in front of this class, you can see the icon changed to /I. So we will toggle this class from the JavaScript in order to change the icon. So now let's write the JavaScript. So if you haven't liked this video yet, just go down and click on the like button and check your subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, do that right now. Okay, coming back to the topic, first of all select the show password icon and store it inside a variable using the query selector, and do the same for selecting the input box and store it inside a variable, maybe password input. So this way we have access to our password input and the show password, which is the I icon. And now access the variable by calling it name, and then add a event listener to it, which will be the click. So whenever you click on it, this thing will run. And inside the callback, we will toggle the classes here. So access the show password, which is the I icon, and say dot class list dot toggle. Dot class list dot toggle will toggle the classes, and what class we want to toggle, it is this FAI. So If the show password has this FAI, it will remove it, and if it doesn't, it will add it, and it will do the same for this I slash. So if I click on it, you can see the icon is changing, and if I click on it again, it's changed. Now let's change the password input type. So here select the password input variable and say dot type, and set it equals to password input dot type, and here we will going to use the ternary operator, which is a single line if and else condition. So if the password input type is equals to password and the type is referring to this type attribute here, so if it is equals to password, after the question mark we will set it to text, and if it isn't, we will set the type to password, and we will store this text or password string as a value to our password input dot type here. And now if I type anything in this field and click on the icon, you can see whatever the password is. So our show password function is done. Now let's work on this validation thing. But before we add validation, first of all, let's hide this pop-up, so whenever we will focus on input, then only we will see it. So in the CSS, just set the default opacity to 0 and say pointer events none, so it will remove the mouse interaction, and add a transform of translate y a little bit, so it will go 20 pixels down, and add a transition for the smoothness. And now select the password input, and whenever we focus on it, use this tilde key which is above your tab key, and now after that select the password checklist. So this tilde key lets you control this password checklist when you focus on this password key. And why is that? Because our checklist is below this input, and the input and the checklist is inside the same container. So you can see the password input is inside the input box, and the checklist is also inside this input box. So when you focus on the input, just change the opacity back to 1 and set the transform translate y to back to 0, and you can see it is working. If I click on the icon, the pop-up will disappear because it will get out of focus. The password field will get out of focus. So now let's add the JavaScript. So let me add a comment here, which will be strong password validation, and I am a fool who typed string instead of strong, and I didn't notice that, so ignore that. So make a variable, let's call it validation regex, and here we will use the regex, which is the regular expressions to validate the string. If you don't know what regex is, it's a regular expression. It's sort of a pattern which we will use to check the text. So this array will be the pattern, will be the array of regex pattern. So the first item it will hold is this object, which with a key regex, and then the regular expression, which is the pattern. So the first pattern is just saying minimum 8 letters, and now the second object is again the regex key, and here this is just saying any number between 0 to 9. So you can see a pattern here that in the square brackets, if I type 0-9, it means any number from 0 to 9. And the third one will be small a to z. So here in the square bracket, I can say small a lowercase a dash z, and this means any letter between a to z. So this is like setting a pattern, and then we will use this pattern to test whether the text is following that pattern or not. Now check for the capital letters. So inside the square bracket, we will say capital A dash capital Z, and this will cover all the capital letters. And for the special characters, we will add the last wedges or regular expression, which is something like this. Well, if you not understanding what these expressions is and from where I have typed in, well, you can just follow me by watching this video, or you can just Google it by typing regex expression for special characters or for lowercase letters, and you will find the pattern. So this array contains our 5 conditions. Now we just have to loop through this pattern and validate our password value to check whether it follows the patterns or not. So select the password input and add an event listener which will be key up. So whenever there is a key up, we will call this callback, and inside this callback we will loop through this validation regex array using the for each. And to use for each, well, we need to select the item and also the index here. And now in the for each callback, I can first of all make a variable, and this variable will hold a true or a false value, which will be determined using the validation that we are going to do now. So this item referring to this single object, and in this object we need the regex key. So I will say item.regex, and this will return this pattern. So once we get that pattern, I will call .test method, and inside this test method I have to pass the string which I want to test, and in this case it will be the value of this password input. So I will say password input dot value to retrieve the value of the input box, and then run it inside the regex test to get whether it follows the pattern or not. So if it follows the pattern, in that case I will just toggle the class checked from this list item to ticket. So for that we have to first select this list item in the JavaScript. So copy the class name and go to the top. Here make another variable, let's call it password check list, and this will be the array of the list item. So to select more than one item of same class, we will use query selector all method and pass the class name here, and it will create that array. So if the password is valid, we will select the password checklist and use this item index to toggle the class. And since we are using this item index to toggle the class, make sure that your regex condition and your list item in the HTML follow the same rule, which means if the last one states special character in the JavaScript, the last should be the special character pattern, and for the first one it should be the 8 characters long. Otherwise you will see some mistakes or some misvalidations. So once we select it, just use classlist.add to add the checked class, and in the else block, which means if it is not valid, just select the checklist again, and just instead of adding the check, just remove it using this remove method. And now if I just type here anything, you will see it is working. So if I just type here, you will see the lowercase letter got checked because it is satisfying the condition. If I say 1 2 3, the number gets checked off. If I type capital letters and the string is more than 8 characters, everything is checked down now. So this is how you create password validation using the regular expressions, which is regex. So with that, we are done with the project. I hope you learned something from this video. Make sure you like this video and share it with your fellow friends. Do subscribe if you don't want to miss anything like this, and thanks for watching. Bye. Still want to learn something? Well, click here to watch how to make a 3D personal portfolio, or down here to learn how to make an fully working e-commerce website with payment integration.